I thought I'd create this short presentation to walk you through Cybermindz, our programs that we're offering this year. We are targeting cyber teams primarily, but we also have had demand and interest beyond cyber teams, and so this year we're happy to bring in others that are not directly within cybersecurity. We can deliver remotely or in person. All our programs are measurable, they're evidence-based, and we're able to scale. And we're a not-for-profit. We've been established by cybersecurity and mental health leaders. We provide peer-informed, evidence-based mental health support. This is important because we are coming from a deep understanding as practitioners ourselves in the language and culture of cybersecurity. And so all our programs are delivered in that way, and we found that we get a lot more buy-in than if we were to just bring in people that are not tuned to the day-to-day pressures that specifically that cyber teams and those who support them are exposed to. And so we are getting high retention rates and very high response rates to our programs as a result of this. There is no one else in the world that is actually doing this in the way that we are, and we're really proud that we've launched in Australia, although we've now expanded into the US and the UK as well, and there we'll be using facilitators from those jurisdictions. The other thing to note is that our programs are both restorative and also preventative of burnout, anxiety, trauma, etc. So restorative is important because it means that if your teams are already on the brink of burnout, then the protocol that we use has a long application within the military, particularly in the US, and is able to restore people not just back from burnout, but also from deep trauma that they may have been carrying for decades in some cases. But importantly, our programs are also preventative. And in this way, we hope to build a new norm within the industry where we don't wait for people to start burning out, but we're actually giving them the skills and the internal psychological and even neurological resilience so that they can be in those tough, challenging times without becoming a casualty. And in particular, we feel that we have a moral and ethical obligation as cyber leaders to ensure that new entrants that we're bringing into cybersecurity we're not leading them over the precipice by failing to equip them with the necessary survival skills so that they can not only survive but also thrive in these roles. Now, if you were to position us, we're really at that junction, at the confluence of both mental health and cybersecurity. The problem that we're solving is this question of burnout. Primarily, the issue is that we've got skills loss occurring within the sector now. This is impacting on both organizational resilience, but also national security. And so we feel that it's incumbent on us, that given the capabilities that we now have, to bring these programs into organizations so that we can help retain the staff, the key people that are so valuable to your operations. When we look at cybersecurity in particular, we note that there are stressors that are coming to bear on individuals that, in our estimation and through our research, exceed those in other professional groups. And we've got a national baseline study that we're running at the moment that is actually demonstrating that in a way that we can show both quantitatively and qualitatively what the impacts are on cyber professionals. This is a slide just demonstrating some of the specifics which in combination we believe are unique. COVID was a massive shift in all workplaces, but for cybersecurity people that had to protect networks at a time when we were remotifying and allowing people to work from home, the capability of being able to watch the entire perimeter, which was now massively expanded, became exponentially harder. We also see an asymmetry between the attacker skill set and the capability of organizations to defend when attacks, in some cases, are coming from nation-state actors, state actors. And in fact, some of them quasi-military, as you would be aware. And so you really are defending against some of the most elite hackers in the world who may be actually attacking you for geopolitical reasons. So we're under no illusions as to the challenge that you face, but also what we hope to bring are the opportunities around how we can at least keep our people strong and engaged and committed and effective in their work. Now, when we look at the findings that may be accelerating burnout, what we've seen, and we've talked to many cyber professionals both in Australia and overseas, Typically, we see this narrative around a feeling that they're always on duty, that they're under a heavy workload, and that they have a very strong ethos around commitment to the rest of the team. And in turn, this is really a very heavy load for them to be carrying. They also carry this pervasive sense of dread. We refer to it sometimes as this sort of Damocles hanging over their heads, that we just never know when the major attack's going to come that could be catastrophic. Also, the fact that they can't demonstrate success means that it's playing on their own sense of self-worth, self-efficacy. And as you'll see in a moment, this is something that is driving burnout. Fourthly, we also see this concept of imposter syndrome playing through, particularly as skills are lost and people are promoted perhaps in ways that believe that they're actually working in roles that are beyond their capability. Even though they may be highly capable, they carry this self-doubt, and in turn this is governing a sense of malaise or disease that impacts all the way through their mental health. If we look at burnout, there are only 3 dimensions that we measure. One is emotional depletion, this sense of I've got nothing left to give, I'm completely drained. We do see a gender spike in that factor as well, which I won't go into here, but it's something that we need to be very mindful of as we're trying to bring diversity into the workplace. The second dimension is this one of cynicism or depersonalization, where people are feeling powerless or just becoming a little jaded or questioning their own effectiveness. The third one is the one that is really problematic because of the 3. This is the one that predicts resignation intent. And it's the question of, am I good at what I do? When you start to doubt your own efficacy, then you're heading for the door. These are some of the results of our national baseline study that we've been running since 2022. It's ongoing. You can see that there are different slides here. I won't go through all of these now, but largely measuring those 3 dimensions of burnout, the emotional depletion or exhaustion, the cynicism or depersonalization, and the professional efficacy. And fourthly, we've begun measuring sleep quality as well. So let me just quickly walk you through each of these. I mean, really what we're seeing is that cyber teams in particular, across those first 3 metrics, are performing significantly worse than the adult population at large. So these professional groups are very, very prone to burnout for some of the reasons I've mentioned. The third one, the professional efficacy, is really of the 3, the one that predicts resignation intent. And there we are polling worse than frontline healthcare workers. And we've actually been in the national media the last couple of years, and the media have actually picked this up because no one had any idea that because of the work that cyber people do is largely unseen. They had no concept of the degree of stress that they're actually carrying. And in terms of the sleep curve, we see that population distribution, which is the bell curve in the middle, is where the general Australian adult population sits. And the line to the left of that is showing the average within cybersecurity across the cohort that we've measured. And we're basically showing a factor of around 2.5 times worse in terms of sleep quality and disturbance. So that should be a great concern and something that would be impacting on organisational efficiency and organisational resilience. This following slide here, I'm just showing you some stats that have come out of Mimecast and Gartner in the last year or so. Mimecast is now measuring that within leadership roles, 42% are considering leaving their roles within cybersecurity within the next 2 years due to stress or burnout. About half are finding difficulty recruiting once people have experienced an attack, an organisation. It tends to diminish the attractiveness of the organisation for obvious reasons. And more than half are saying their role is getting harder and harder every year. Gartner came and took a look at this as well. They're predicting that half of the cybersecurity leaders will be leaving their jobs by 2025. 25% of them will actually leave the industry. So that's a very great concern at a time when we face such a skills loss and shortage in these critical roles. But 50%, Gartner says, will be improved, the improvement in retention for organisations that implement peer-informed mental health support. And Gartner actually referred to Cybermind's work in this report as an example of what leadership looks like. And in fact, the quote from their report is that the cybersecurity industry will shift from HR-driven approaches to more structured personal resilience programming, and they made specific reference to us in the sense of personal resilience training that is peer-informed and is customized for the specific occupational groups that we're talking to. So in other words, they're saying that the general broad brush approach that HR might be normally inclined to deliver, including EAPs, will not have sufficient effectiveness with cybersecurity teams. So that's a pretty concerning statistic, but of course it's very encouraging and a huge validation from the work we're doing. We use the integrated restoration or the IREST protocol. It's something that was developed by Dr. Richard Miller in California, a clinical psychologist with whom we work very closely now. In fact, he is a co-director with me on the US Cybermindz board. He's also the chair of our Global Advisory Council. He developed the protocol. It was taken into the US military in 2006. It's used to rebuild or to build mental resilience through restructuring the neurology. And the way it works is it takes people into a deep state of rest where they can properly process a lot of the cognitive and emotional load that they're carrying. And as a result, they start to feel replenished, their sleep improves, they have a greater sense of mental clarity, a greater sense of control, and even we hear things like people feeling like they're making better decisions now. So we're really encouraged by the results. As I mentioned, we did 12 pilot programs last year with 180 cyber professionals. We took our programs into national security, in Department of Defense, one of the major educational institutions and cybersecurity consulting firms that you would know. And we witnessed across that entire cohort an average of 27% decrease across 10 stress metrics within 8 weeks. So this was really powerful for us that we're actually able to measure. We have on our board Dr. Andrew Reeves, who is a cybersecurity expert, but also an organizational and behavioral psychologist. And so he's conducting some of the first research in burnout and cybersecurity. As a result, we're in a privileged position where we can report back to clients on the effectiveness of the program so that you can actually see in a qualitative, data-driven way the results of the investment that you're making in your people. We use the integrated restoration or the IREST protocol. It's something that was developed by Dr. Richard Miller in California, a clinical psychologist with whom we work very closely now. In fact, he is a co-director with me on the US Cybermindz board. He's also the chair of our Global Advisory Council. He developed the protocol. It was taken into the US military in 2006. It's used to rebuild or to build mental resilience through restructuring the neurology. And the way it works is it takes people into a deep state of rest where they can properly process a lot of the cognitive and emotional load that they're carrying. And as a result, they start to feel replenished, their sleep improves, they have a greater sense of mental clarity, a greater sense of control, and even we hear things like people feeling like they're making better decisions now. So we're really encouraged by the results. When we look at the outcome that the teams report, they're generally talking about a greater sense of self-regulation, internal emotional regulation, a better ability to concentrate, a more positive approach, particularly during busy times, a greater sense of awareness and mindfulness of their own emotions and stress. So they're actually becoming more conscious of things that typically they may have been repressing and not paying sufficient attention to. And then because the protocol enables them to properly process the emotions and the stresses that are being held deeply in their subconscious mind, it means that their sleep quality improves because they're not getting disturbed by a lot of stuff that's happening in the background that normally would be, often people report waking up in the middle of the night with their minds racing. It's because the proper processing hasn't occurred. When we look at the neurology of this, we actually see over time that building new pathways in the brain so that we're de-escalating stressors that are triggering the flight and fight response, and instead we're actually building new neural networks that are supporting a new default state of calm and emotional regulation and just a sense of equanimity. If we were to make a number of recommendations in terms of how you would bring the program into your organization, we would be firstly encouraging you to start normalizing the conversation around mental health. I know that that is happening to some extent, but often organizations find when they bring Cybermindz into the workplace, we create a psychological safe space where people are actually able to share the kind of pressures they're under, and in turn, we start to give them the sense that they're not as isolated, they're not alone in this. And in turn, that has a tremendously supportive effect on morale when people feel that this is a shared challenge. We then go in to provide direct support, ideally, as I mentioned before, in a preventative way. Also, we can offer post-incident support to counter trauma, which is a byproduct of a major breach. And ideally, we want to be there before a breach occurs. But if a breach has occurred, we're able to go in there and just mitigate the effects of the psychological trauma that in some cases will persist. We know of one major breach in Australia, I won't mention the entity, but the 15 months after the breach occurred, the team is still having nightmares. So this is a non-trivial thing, and we believe goes to even a duty of care in terms of making sure that we're putting people in psychologically dangerous situations. We've got to make sure that we're giving them the appropriate care. I should also mention that some jurisdictions now are actually regulating, as you're probably aware, psychosocial workplace support, and our program is designed to dovetail very neatly and to satisfy the requirements there. In terms of the overall outcomes, we will then reinforce positive outcomes and help the team celebrate wins in terms of their own improvements in mental health. And finally, and absolutely essential, is to integrate these programs into the culture, so that this is not a flash in the pan one-off type thing, but this is something that is day-to-day built in to the workplace. And we're really only interested in long-term relationships, because the pressures are relentless, and if we were to go in and just do a short-term program, we would definitely get an uptick in mental health, but you could be sure that if the culture isn't supporting that in an ongoing way, then you're likely to see a retrograde sort of motion back into the pre-training state once the support is removed. In 2024, this year, we've just launched 3 new service offerings. In fact, there are 4. I'll speak to those in a moment. They're each different in their own way, and they all came out of the 12 pilot programs that we did. We had a good look at the data and the feedback we got, and we realized that we needed a sustainability program that organizations could build in. So we are supporting them in a long-term way, and that was to my previous point. Also, we built an individualized support program for cyber leaders, others in leadership roles, which is one-on-one support. And then thirdly, we've got the post-incident trauma support. We call it Rapid Reset. And let me walk you through each of those now. This is a lot to take in, and I don't want to contribute to your sense of overload any more than I need to, but you do have the PDF of this. High level through each of these programs, Rapid Reset is designed to provide a concentrated reset, and particularly in trauma situations where we come in over 4 weeks, 2 sessions a week, plus we mentor individually every single person in the team with check-ins with our trained facilitators. We give you all the reporting as well, and we give them recordings of the protocol to practice with. So the idea is that over a number of exposures to the protocol, you start to see a turnaround in their state of trauma. Richard Miller told me when he took the program into the US military, they were seeing people coming in with the highest levels of trauma from war zones. These are combat veterans. And within 18 exposures to the protocol, he had them down below into subclinical levels where they were not technically PTSD anymore. So that's a phenomenal use case of how this protocol actually works. Steady Shields, as I mentioned, is the 12-month program. We can deliver it online or in person. The recordings are again provided. In addition, when you sign on to that, we provide casual drop-in sessions 2 a week so that we can continue to support them even outside of the 3 main training blocks that we deliver over the course of a year. And again, you will get all the metrics that go with that. The CISO support, which is the leadership program, is a one-on-one. It's a mentored approach where we're working directly with the individuals concerned. It's structured to meet the pressures of leadership. And again, you would get the full IREST protocol, but you also use the IREST dyad system, which is this thing that Richard Miller has developed, which has the ability to work directly with the things that are troubling you as a leader and giving you a new regained sense of control and calm and perspective over your role. And finally, I want to talk about Base Camp. Base Camp is the preparatory training. We use the metaphor of the pre-ascent. So the concept here is that before they begin this journey of mental health restoration and prevention, we want to give them a good theoretical understanding of some of the neuroscience behind stress and burnout, how the protocol itself works to rebuild resilience. We also invite them to commit to the program so that we're getting them to sign on at an individual and also a team level so that we can make sure that we can build some internal and team accountability around participation. That's very important for us because we want everyone to know that they're doing this not only for themselves but for the team. We also provide a clear set of expectations around time commitment and what's required of them outside of the formal training period, and then we give them some of the logistics. This program is also designed for leadership and decision makers who may not necessarily be undergoing the training themselves, but we want them to understand exactly what it is that the teams are being exposed to, what the training entails, so that you get a better understanding when we give you the metrics of what in fact it was that delivered the outcomes that we hope to be able to show you. So Basecamp is really designed as the theoretical. It's done online by the individuals in a self-paced way through our learning management system, and we can track the progress of that and report back to make sure that we really don't begin the program until everyone's done Basecamp. So that's an outline of Cybermindz, what we do, why we're here, how we deliver, what our objectives are, and how we're intending to come in and really transform the human face of cybersecurity, and again, those other teams that are indirectly engaged in support roles that are ancillary but nevertheless critical to the efficient running of the organization.